Thank you very much. So a very old friend of mine, the excellent Ed Woods. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for the introduction there, CJ. Okay. So this evening, I'm going to talk about a few different road ghosts. I start off with the A38 hitchhiker because it's a pretty well-known and classic example. There's also a few other ones I want to throw in there as well. So what I'm doing is a combination of the first example I'm going to give will be of what would be an interactive entity of some description. And there's a couple more entities which I think are more like recordings. Sorry, am I getting hecklers?
Not yet. Sorry, I think.
Right. So yes, Anyway, so the second two examples I'm going to give are actually more like recordings because they just repeat themselves. And then there's a final example I'm going to give, which is quite bizarre and hasn't been given any sort of explanation of any sort. Possible time slip. Just a very, very strange and almost unique experience. Okay. So we'll start off with the A38 ghost, hitchhiker. I don't know if anybody knows anything about the A38. It is actually the longest two-digit road in the UK. I can't remember how long it is. It's over 200 miles or something. It's a very long road anyway. Part of it passes down through Somerset and then goes into sort of the middle of Devon, also middle and sort of southern Devon. And along a section of it, which I've measured, it's about 18.5 miles when it's on the map. There have been a series of incidents dating back to 1958, and it seemingly as recently as 2016, which involves a sort of a man who looks like it. I mean, the description of the man is a middle-aged man with long curly grey hair, a cream or grey Macintosh. Some people have described it as having a hood. He stands in the road. He carries a torch and sometimes is shining it downwards as if looking for something. Okay, this is a general description of the fellow. He may jump in front of vehicles and vanish. These are other things that he has done also as well. As far as anyone knows, I've not come across any information that anyone knows who he actually is, or was, more to the point, or what he's looking for, or why he does this thing. But we don't know. There's no history behind it, apart from the fact he's there for some reason. The presence of the fact that he wears a Macintosh and has an electric torch would suggest that he's a fairly modern ghost. I mean, there's nothing out of the ordinary, which would certainly, when he was first reported, there was nothing out of the ordinary to suggest that he was anything like a ghost. I mean, he wasn't like dressed as a sort of an 18th century highwayman or something like that would make him really obviously a ghost. He looked contemporary. So there's that point. So he is actually, although he is referred to as a phantom hitchhiker, there's only one person who's ever actually given him a lift, as he hitched a ride with, which I'll go on to in a minute, which is one of the very, I mean, there are numerous stories of phantom hitchhikers getting lifts all over the world. This one is interesting on the grounds that the person who gave him the lift, the driver who gave him the lift, actually did it 3 times. So this is one I haven't really heard of. It's normally just that when people give phantom hitchhikers a lift, they do it the once. This time he gave 3 times. So I'll start off with the very first incident involving this case. There was a long distance lorry driver. Hang on. Are you going to deal with the slides, CJ, by the way? Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah. Just tell me when you want the next slide. I'll put it up. No problem at all.
Yes.
Ed, add them in chat. Please do.
Oh yes, please do. Yes. Yes. So if you wouldn't mind sticking up the next slide, please, CJ.
The Blackbird Inn.
That's the one. Now, this is Blackbird Inn. This is on the A38, as you can see, it passes past it. The lorry driver, Harold Unsworth, long distance lorry driver, he was driving along it was going down to Columpton in Devon. So he's going down from, well, on the road from Taunton, going in the direction of Wellington. This was in autumn, from what I've been able to find out, this was in autumn 1958, possibly August, for the reason that the third time he gave the man a lift, this entity a lift, was 3 months later in November. So I'm assuming that the original sightings were in August. Unsworth did report his experiences in the Exeter Express and Echo sometime later, but I'll get on to that later on. So you came across a man standing in the middle of the road, dressed as I've described him. It was foul weather, about 3 o'clock in the morning, and it was outside the Blackbird Inn, as you can see there. Okay. So if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, please, CJ, on that one.
Can you see that, Ed?
Yeah, I see that fine. Can everybody see that? Yes, this is my reconstruction of what he saw. He saw a man, middle-aged man, long grey curly hair, cream or grey Macintosh, carrying a torch in the road. Oh no, hang on, CJ, you can go back. It's okay, stop.
Yeah, I'm trying to work out how to.
You've no, you've got
My apologies. I've gone forwards one too far, and I can't work out how to get it to go backwards.
Oh, I was hoping that the impact of my image would be allowed to stay a bit longer there.
Hang on, Ed.
Yeah. Okay.
Let me try this again. Give me a second. Okay, there we go. My apologies. That was entirely my fault. Go on.
Yeah, that's going to illustrate the next part of what I was going to say. But can you go back?
Yeah, we're there now.
There you go. Right, that's fine. Okay, so as I said, he was driving along. He comes to the Blackbird Inn. He sees this figure sitting in the road, wearing those clothes like that. This is my sort of reconstruction. 3 o'clock in the morning. It was foul weather, and the man was soaking wet. It's rain, water pouring off of him all over his face and everything else, his clothes and everything else. The man sort of shone his torch in Unsworth's eyes, sort of said, look, when I asked for a lift. Harold Unsworth then picked him up. He asked him where he wanted to go, and the hitchhiker said that he wanted to go to Beambridge, which is a few miles down the road. You can change the slide now, please, CJ.
Yes, certainly. I'm just doing that now.
There we go. Oh, somebody else wants to come in. That's fine. So you've then got, as you can see, you've got the Blackbird in there. And you have, it's about 4.5 miles to the Beambridge Hotel. So with that according to Google, it takes about 8 minutes. So we can assume that the journey would have taken a similar amount of time for Unsworth and his hitchhiker. As he was driving along, the hitchhiker seemed to have a rather morbid interest in all the accidents that had happened along the road, and was describing them to Unsworth about all the nasty, horrible accidents that had happened there. So he was probably quite happy to drop him off at his destination and get rid of him, as you really don't want a morbid sort of person like that in your in your cab if you're a lorry driver. But anyway, there we go. So he dropped him off. Later on, a short while later, Unsworth was making the same journey. He then came across this man at the Blackbird Inn. Again, gave him a lift to Beambridge Hotel. CJ, if you wouldn't mind just giving the next picture, please. Next slide. There you go. So that's Beambridge. I mean, that's what it looks like now. I suspect it's changed a bit in the last sort of 63 years, but there's a railway bridge there, so it's there. So there's a hotel just on the left, you can't, I think you just about make it out, but it's there. There's a hotel there. So he wanted to be dropped off there. So Unsworth dropped him off these 2 occasions and then carried on his way down the A38. On about 3 months later, which is in November 1958, this is how I've sort of calculated that the previous events were in August. Unsworth again comes across the hitchhiker in foul weather. Man's there. Says, "Oh, right," gives him a lift. Goes down to where was Beambridge. This time round, the hitchhiker says, "Well, wouldn't mind waiting? I've got to collect some suitcases." Because from the hotel, or presumably from the hotel. Unsworth, okay, parked up. He was there for 20 minutes. He's a long-distance lorry driver. He was doing it for a living. It was in the early hours of the morning, about 3 o'clock in the morning. After 20 minutes, he decided that, well, he's not coming out. He's obviously not coming. I'll just carry on my way. So he carried on driving down the road. Next slide, please, AJ. Now, you can see on this map, you can see you've got the Blackbird Inn, you've then got the Beambridge Hotel, and then you have Morgan's Transport Cafe. Okay, the distance is about just over 3 miles. It's about 3.2 miles between the Beambridge Hotel and Morgan's Transport Cafe. And so he carried on driving from the Beambridge Hotel. He got down to the Morgan's Transport Cafe, which you can see in the bottom left-hand corner there. It's down in 38. Next slide, please, CJ.
Does that go to?
That's fine. That's okay like that. Yeah, that's okay. That's Morgan's Transport Cafe on there. As Unsworth's lorry came to the Transport Cafe there, say just over 3 miles down the road. This is in the space of yes, you've been waiting 20 minutes, and then maybe a few miles down the road, that's what, maybe sort of about 6 minutes drive, or somewhere between 3 and 6 minutes drive, and for 3 miles, isn't it? So as he got there, he saw the man stood again in the middle of the road, waving a torch and shaking his fist. Now, there's no physical way. I mean, there's been no other vehicles have been on the road past Unsworth, so the man couldn't have had a lift. And somehow he had managed to cover 3 miles in 20 minutes, or 3.2 miles in about 20 minutes, without being seen and without Unsworth passing him or anything else. And he was stood there in the middle of the road, waving his torch around and shaking his fist angrily at Harold Unsworth. Because he appeared immediately in front of him, Unsworth just drove straight into him. He didn't feel any impact. He skidded to a halt. He then climbed out the cab, thinking that he'd run him over and killed him. But then, some way back behind the lorry, he could see the man stood there in the road, still shaking his fist, as if nothing had happened. Basically, he hadn't hit him, or he thought he'd hit him, but he hadn't. He stood there shaking his fist. Then the man turned his back on Unsworth and vanished, gone, disappeared completely. Okay? So that was it. That was the end of Harold Unsworth's experiences with the hitchhiker. He wasn't the only person who had these experiences. Because 12 years later, in 1970, Kathy Swithenbank of Taunton, it was her report that actually inspired Harold Unsworth to come forward, and also somebody else as well, a motorcyclist. Kathy Swithenbank, she claimed in the Western Morning News to have seen him one night in the summer of 1970. Standing in the middle of the road with a torch. Next slide, please, AJ. Actually, skip one, please, if you wouldn't mind. Just go back onto that one in a minute. I did it. I've got yeah. I'll take it. We'll do this. We'll do it this way around. That is it's now called the World's End. That's what it's called now. It was at the time called the Heatherton Grange Hotel. So he came around the corner. I think the road may have been straightened out since, subsequently. And she said she saw him standing in the road with a torch, like he was looking at something on the road. She couldn't brake fast enough. She swerved, thought she'd hit him, got out, and then found out that he disappeared. He wasn't there anymore. If you wouldn't mind just going back again, CJ, for that one.
Yeah.
Okay,
Let me
sorry.
just try and work out.
Don't worry, I won't ask you to do this again. I'll just we'll do it whatever, however it comes out,
It's
and I'll.
no problem, Ed. I can work it out. I just need to. Right. So which side are we on? We're on the anchor in, which is this one, aren't we?
The heather. Yeah, there we go. No, the other way around. So you go the other direction. You're going the wrong way.
That one?
You're actually literally going the wrong way. The map's going the wrong way as well.
Is it this one? They all look the same to me.
Yeah. No, not that one. The other. No, you're going too far. You're going the opposite direction. No. Hang on. Go. Yeah, keep going down that way. That's the one. Yes, that's the one. Yeah, there we go. That's that one. Yep.
This one I'm showing now. Yeah.
That one. Yes, if you wouldn't mind blowing it up. Yes, that's fine. Yeah.
Certainly.
Yeah, so I won't ask you to do that again. I think
that's okay. It's just because I'm controlling it through your computer, not from mine. It's a bit because I'm
I see. Right, that's fair enough.
I'm remotely logged into your PC and doing it like that, so it's very hard for me to go backwards because I can't control it.
I see. Fair enough. Okay, well, anyway, there we go. So you can see where the World's End is there. That is, it used to be called the Heatherton Grange Hotel. You can see where the Blackbird Inn is as well. So instead of being picked up at hanging around the Blackbird Inn, like as before, he's sort of moved a little way further up the way towards Taunton. Taunton is in the top right-hand corner, basically. You can see where it says Bishop's Hull and Runwell and places like that. Taunton is in that direction. So he's moved up the road a bit. So you can see Blackbird Inn. He's at the Heatherton Grange. Okay, that's where Kathy Swithenbank's experience was. And because she came forward and said about this is when Harold Unsworth came forward and to give his story as well. There's also a motorcyclist came forward as well and said that he'd broken his leg. He'd come off his motorbike when trying to avoid this man in the road. So similar experience, swerved. Unfortunately, because the motorcyclist was only on two wheels, when he swerved, he fell off and broke his leg. Okay. There's also another case. Now, I couldn't find the actual location for this, but this was in 1973. There was a Mrs. Taylor who was driving along the A38 near Taunton, and she saw a man in the middle of the road, head bowed as if he was looking for something on the ground. She swerved to avoid him, but on leaving the car, realised that there was no one there. Okay. So there is some sort of significance about it. The fact he's going around at night, he can be seen with a torch. I don't know whether or not Mrs. Taylor saw him during the day or at night. But he just seemed to be sort of intently looking at something on the ground with a torch, trying to find something. As to what it is, nobody knows. Okay. We go forward a little bit in time. So, CJ, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, please. And the one afterwards, please. There we go. Now, we go forward a little bit of time to 1991. There was a woman, this is December 1991. There was a woman driving along the A38 of Runwell, which you could see where it says Crown Eye Care. That used to be the Crown Inn at Runwell. It's recently been turned into an optician's, but they kept the name. As you can see, it's about slightly over 2 miles further up the road from the Blackbird Inn. It's moving closer towards Taunton now, but it's 2 miles away. Driving along the A38 at Runwell, and there was a man in a grey raincoat standing in the road, flashing a torch. She swerved and went into a ditch. She angrily got out of the car, but he'd vanished. If you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, please, CJ.
So they all feature a man with a torch.
Yeah, that's right. This is the Crown. This is approximately. Yeah. Okay. So this is sort of a nice Google Street View. There you can see where the Crown is on the left. This is the A38. Looking in the direction of Taunton. Taunton is pretty much just over with those. You see the line of trees with the hill with the line of trees on it. That is basically the edge of Taunton. Okay. So he appeared somewhere around here at this point. This is 2 miles further away from in the other direction. So she got out of the car, he'd vanished. Now, the most recent case I've seen, again, this was in response to I treat this as a little degree of suspicion on the grounds that it was on a website. Someone had made a mention of the Unsworth case, and someone had come along and had responded to it. So they obviously they may well have had prior knowledge of it because obviously the website's there. But the report was on the 19th of January 2016, a clear and frosty night around 10 past 11 at night. A Julie claimed to have been driving past the Crown Inn at Rumwell, which is the place on the left there, when a tall, thin figure dressed in a long grey hooded coat just appeared on the road next to the pavement. They just missed him, and the passenger was a witness, so they'd been travelling on the left-hand side of the road going towards Taunton. Okay. In shock, they continued towards Taunton as far as the Stone Gallows pub, which isn't on the map, but I think it's not very far up the road. It's probably about another mile. And then they turned around and went back towards Rumwell to see if the person was okay. So they were heading in the direction of Taunton, just missed this person, had a horrible fright, turned around, came back again, going in the direction back towards Wellington in that direction. They came back to see if he was okay. They couldn't see anything. And just as they were relaxing, they thought, well, okay, everything, we didn't hit him. The figure appeared again in the road, and this time, and he leapt at him again. This time, the passenger said that the figure was smiling at him, apparently. Okay. But that's the most recent one. That's about just under 6 years ago, and that's the most recent case. So on the matter of the Phantom Hitchhiker, I wasn't able to find any information as to any suggestion as to who it might be. I mean, it's obviously a fairly modern. The origins are fairly modern because of the attire, or the general attire. Macintosh. All right, fair enough. It's not very modern, but I mean, if you saw someone in a Macintosh, you wouldn't think that they were an ancient. You wouldn't think there's anything out of the ordinary. And in fact, it's got an electric torch as well. So this is obviously something quite recent in recent history. Does appear to be looking for something. Don't know what that is. This makes it interesting. Unsworth's account that he was recounting tales of local accidents. I mean, it suggested he might be he may have been involved, killed in an accident of some sort, possibly. Maybe he's looking for something that he lost as a result of the accident.
I'm sure he's not a genius loci, a spirit that waits and causes the accident, said by his perverse capering in the road.
It could well be. It could well be. He seems to be quite happy to try and cause accidents. Maybe he was, maybe he was run over by somebody and wants to seek revenge on them, or who knows what, on motorists. Who knows? It's a very interesting one though, especially as especially as I said, he's been picked up 3 times by the same person. And if you go to the next slide, CJ, I think there's like one final slide on this section. If you wanted to just go to that. I marked out where all the various different things are, so you can see this is the general map. You've got a distance there of 18.4 miles. You've got anything from Morgan's Transport Cafe right up to Rumwell. You are looking at, yes, it's about 18.5 miles, or about half an hour's worth of driving. So about roughly over half of that, so about almost 2/3 of it was just what Harold Unsworth was doing, which is driving backwards and forwards between the Blackbird Inn and Bainbridge Hotel, and then Morgan's Transport. And then you've got the other bits as well. Sorry, carry on.
Sorry, I'm going to ask a question now because I think it would make more sense for people if we ask it now. We've got Free from 1958. What was the sequence of the Free from 58? Was it Morgan's, Beam, and then Blackbird?
It was Blackbird, Bainbridge, then Morgan's Transport Cafe.
Oh, so he's not moving closer to Taunton. That was what I was wondering.
No. He started off on. He was always being. He kept getting picked up at the Blackbird Inn, and then he kept getting taken to the Bainbridge Hotel, and that was 3 times on 3 occasions. The lorry driver did that. He took him there. On the 3rd occasion, the lorry driver just sort of decided that's when he decided he wasn't going to wait for him, because he'd asked for him to wait for him and he didn't. And he carried on driving down 3 miles down the road to Morgan's Transport Cafe, and that's where the man reappeared in front of him. So he's obviously got that section of road. He appears anywhere between Blackbird Inn and Morgan's Transport Cafe. Subsequently, he's then been seen further up the road towards Taunton in 1970 when he stood outside what's now the World's End pub, Heatherton Grange Hotel. He was there in 1970, and then in 91 and 2016, he's been seen around Rumwell. So if anything, really, since 1958, the sightings have moved closer to Taunton. But it's almost like he haunts that entire. I mean, it's a big section of road. I mean, it's like 18 and a half miles. So I didn't really realize it was that much, and then I measured it out using this. Realized how big it was. I thought, good grief! Yeah. So I was under the impression it was only like a couple of miles, or maybe a few miles, but it's actually quite a large section. So it's not like he haunts a particular place. It's almost like he haunts the road itself, almost. Which is very interesting. Anyway, that's the A38 ghost. So I think, apart from that rather strange, that's a very interesting case. I'm going on to now something which is, I suppose, interesting in their own way, but probably more of a traditional sort of haunting, more of a sort of a recording type apparitions. The ones we're going on to in a minute, if you wouldn't mind, CJ, just to go to the next slide. That's a good point there, Caroline. Yeah. I mean, I haven't checked the fatalities, but there are dangerous, quite a lot of accidents along there. In fact, actually, to be honest, there are other ghosts on the A38. There's one up near Barrow Tanks, just south of Bristol. The woman walks into the road, and there's lots of skid marks around that way, apparently, as well. So it's quite a long road, so you'd expect there to be lots of accidents and therefore ghosts and things along it. But anyway, the next section I'm going on to is about phantom lorries. These, as I said, these are more the ones I'm going to describe are more of a sort of traditional sort of haunting with, sort of a recording type thing. They don't interact with anybody. Okay, the first one we're going to have a look at. I had heard, this goes back decades. This goes back probably about 40 years, and it's to do with a phantom lorry that is on the A45 between Rugby and Coventry. Now, this one. This one is. I decided to look into it quite recently, a few months ago, because I'd read about it, but I thought, well, okay, I just do a bit of digging, and just out of interest, I thought I'd do a bit of digging. And this is really the reason why I'm now giving this. There you go. That's a good example. This is a good. This is the reason why I'm sort of giving the lecture now. Really, this is what encouraged CJ to put me up here to giving this lecture. It sort of developed from this point. There's a phantom lorry, so I did some digging on it. Now, well, it turns out that several motorists are reported having to swerve to avoid a lorry that subsequently vanishes. So they see this lorry coming down, and it's something like that. I think it was the lorry is a sort of a 1920s type lorry, so that's a sort of a steam lorry type thing. So if you just go to the next slide, please, CJ.
They're quite pretty, aren't they?
It's very nice, isn't it? It says you've got the sort of the old livery that they would have had from with horse-drawn days.
I know the Stanley Steamer, which was a British steam car. That was very
American, actually, but yes.
Was it American? Right, yes. I know that happened in Britain, but yeah. Here we go. These lorries are beautiful. I think.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they are. They're very nice.
45 used to run all the way to Bury St Edmunds, but that was no longer. So now
yeah, here we are. This is the A45 anyway. So this is going up. The event. The road is nothing like what it was originally. They've made it a dual carriageway, and it's back in when the reports first started, which was in the 30s. This would have been probably just half that size. Well, there's probably a third of that size. Okay. So it appears between Stretton-on-Dunsmore and Brighton-on-Dunsmore. It's on London Road, and it goes up Nightlow Hill. Now this is Nightlow Hill here, going up here. I mean, Nightlow Hill is actually quite historically interesting. For there's the Roth Silver Ceremony that takes place each year on St. Martin's Eve. If you go to the next slide, CJ, I think there might. I think I might have a picture of something on it. Or there we go. Yeah. So this is where they hold the Roth silver ceremony. I think it was King George V attended it just before the Great War, I believe. But anyway, that's nothing to do with the ghost story. It's just actually interesting for a point of view of an antiquarian. But that's interesting. So anyway, this is it's on the hill. This is where these reports go back to the 1930s and at least up to the 1980s. With this one, they said that the lorry has blazing headlights. The incidents tend to happen in thick fog. The lorry is driving erratically or at speed or both, suggesting that it is out of control. It's reported to driving on the wrong side of the road, vanishing as it meets oncoming traffic. There is actually there are some reports that people have said wrote into newspapers about it, which are quite interesting. I mean, they do give a lot more. They give a lot of background on what the on not only sightings of it, but also a possible cause, which is always nice to have a cause as to why this haunting has happened. So in 1984, a retired police constable, G. Forsyth, he recalled an event that happened to him in 1952. He lived locally and was nearby when there was a traffic pile-up in thick fog. After he'd organised the motorists to build warning bonfires 100 yards each side of the accident and was dealing with the injured, he heard an old-looking lorry coming out of the fog. I mean, someone said, "Oh, there's another one coming." I think it was somebody was saying, "Oh, look, there's another one." And just as they said that, this old-looking lorry came out of the fog with headlights blazing and with a tarpaulin on the back. So very much like the photograph. So it's like one of those sort of things. It didn't heed any warnings. Everyone was sort of stop, trying to make it slow down because it was going straight into a traffic pile-up, and they tried to stop it. It just went straight towards the pile-up and vanished into this thing. So it didn't. It just completely vanished in front of everybody, including this police officer. So what the retired policeman Forsyth said, G. Forsyth said, he said there'd been local sort of a phantom lorry on the road, but I'd always dismissed the stories out of hand. That night, I'm convinced I saw it. So yeah, just all sort of silly local myths about phantom lorries. And there you go. He had to be humble pie on that one. Also in 1984, a reader wrote into the Coventry Evening Telegraph to say that as a boy in the winter of 1926-1927, he was living at Stretton-on-Dunsmore, which is at the top of Ryton Hill. Wasn't Ryton Hill, Nightlow Hill. So he was living at Stretton-on-Dunsmore at the top of Nightlow Hill, and his father was late cycling home from work. His father said that a lorry had overturned on Nightlow Hill, the driver being trapped and burning to death. So this seems like a very possible origin. 1926-27. I mean, the stories go back to the 1930s. The lorry, so the description of the lorry seems to fit that sort of era. So it's likely that, by the sounds of it, that a lorry was coming down the hill, went out of control for whatever reason, turned over, the driver was trapped inside and burned to death. Okay, hence the origin of the haunting. I also found a comment from about 11 years ago, someone I found online. They said that the accident had happened in heavy fog on a November night when their great-grandfather was a policeman. They said about 2007, someone had driven through a fence on Nightlow Hill, and a couple of weeks later had seen an article in the Rugby Observer when the driver had claimed that they'd swerved to avoid a lorry on the wrong side of the road. So that was so that we could say that there were still instances of this going up to about 2007, so about 14 years ago for that one. But the other thing is, it's the A45 is the road that is regarded as happening on. Although they've also said the A428 Coventry to Rugby Road has also given us a location, but I've dismissed that really because it doesn't pass through Brighton on Dunsmore at all, Stretton on Dunsmore, and it doesn't go up Nightlow Hill, so it doesn't match any of the witnesses' descriptions. So, I mean, witnesses described it as being on Nightlow Hill. The A428 road does not go up Nightlow Hill. So I think that for whatever reason that's been misidentified in that respect. As I said, with that, with the A45, it was a single carriageway road. It's now been upgraded to a dual carriageway at that point. So although that's an illustration of the A45 is now, it is not the A45 of 1926, 1927, which would have been altogether quite different. Okay. Some WAG has also suggested, if anyone knows about Brighton on Dunsmore, it's right where the West Midlands motor industry was based at Brighton on Dunsmore. So someone suggested that the lorry is the ghost of the West Midlands motor industry, which I thought was very cruel of them to say that.
I like that.
Okay, that's fine. There is the photograph, by the way. That's a Sentinel Standard 6-ton steam wagon from 1921. So that's probably fairly similar to what the vehicle would have been. Okay, so that's the first phantom story, lorry story. There's another one though, which is also quite well referred to, which is it's from Scotland and it's on the A7, which goes from Stow towards Edinburgh.
Next picture.
Yes, please. Oh, actually, that's a map of the A45. Actually, the middle where it says A45 is roughly where the sightings are of that lorry. That's the one I just told you. Just skip forward one, please. Sorry, I forgot to ask you to change the slides. I should have done. Got carried away. Here we go. Right, we can stop here. You've got here. So on the A7, you've got. Here you have Gala Bank, if you can see on the bottom of the map there, and the photograph is that approximates to where Gala Bank is. Okay, well, it's just south. You're looking north, and it's just south of Gala Bank. Okay, on that map, you have on here. So the accounts of this one, it's seen driving along a sheep track at the approach to Watherston Hill before joining the main road towards Edinburgh. If you could go to, if you just see, you could just see the where it says Watherston on there. Watherston Hill is approximately where that road. It's basically where the road. You've got like a fishhook shape where the road, the A7 goes round, very close to the railway line there. That's Watherston Hill. It's the foot of Watherston Hill, and you've got Watherston Cottages. Could you go to the next slide, please, CJ? Oh, there we go. It's round one. So this is actually quite helpful. You can see the bend there in the road. You can see the photograph of the bend going around the road, and then on the right you have you've got a little gate on the left there, which is I believe it's a sheep track. This is relevant. I think this is relevant to what I'm about to say. The lorry is described as an old-fashioned looking vehicle driven by an evil-looking man. The lorry is described as driving silently and swiftly. As with the A45 lorry, it's reputed to have caused accidents with motorists either swerving to avoid it or following it into a wall at the bend in the road. So it's driving. It comes out of that out of this the sheep track, which I believe is that one there. That seems to be in the right location. As you look at the sheep track, that gate there in the right-hand picture, you're actually facing south towards Stow. On the left-hand picture, you're facing north towards Edinburgh. So it sort of drives out of that little gate on the right in the right-hand picture, comes onto the road, drives. It's not that far along the road; it's about a few hundred yards, and then disappears into, I mean, that wall, on the other side of that wall on that bend is the railway line. So it disappears into that. That seems to be a likely candidate for the wall that it drives into. And that seems to be a likely candidate for the sheep track. Okay. In the summer of 1956, Mrs. May Craig saw a lorry traveling towards down a rough sheep track driven by an evil looking man. So I think that's a likely candidate for that. On the map, you can see that the red road is the A7 to the west of a gall of water. The railway line between Tweedbank and Edinburgh Waverley and an unnamed minor road. Beyond those, open countryside. So in order to join the A7 from the west, a phantom lorry would have to cross all three of them. So that's why I don't think it came in from the west at all. There's no mention of it, this phantom lorry crossing the main railway line to Edinburgh or anything like that. So there's no mention of anything like frightening train drivers or anything like that. So it comes in from the east somewhere, so from the right-hand side. And it also is said to travel from Stowe northwards towards Edinburgh. Okay, so this is why I'm saying that it's coming in from the right-hand side. The only problem with this is, of course, if you think about it, a car coming in, a vehicle coming in from the east, which is the right-hand side of the A7, as we look at it, because the vehicles drive on the left-hand side of the road, what it would have to do, first of all, is actually cross the southbound carriageway by coming out of that little gate. It would cross the southbound carriageway and then turn right along the northbound carriageway in order to travel on the left-hand side of the road. So it actually drives on the wrong side of the road, or it crosses out of the road, which must also cover a lot of problems. I would cause problems, I would think, as well. But there again, as I have pointed out before, a ghost is unlikely to be bothered about the highway code, and none of the reports mention lorries on the wrong side of the road, unlike the A45 lorry.
My apologies, Ed, if you can hear snoring. It's not one of our listeners. It's my cat who's.
Oh, I see. Sorry, if I'm bothering you. I don't want to make you bore you with bore you with talk about which side of the road it's ghosts are driving.
No. I'm really enjoying it. Thank you, Ed. Sorry, in case anyone could hear the strange noise. I'm trying to wake him up. But...
No, I say it's fine. I can't hear him. That's fine. But anyway, it seems that he comes out of the sheep track. He crosses the road, and the southbound carriageway goes on to the other side of the road, goes up the northbound carriageway, and then sort of befuddles motorists. But the thing about following the lorry into a wall implies that the phantom driver may well be evil looking, but at least he drives on the left-hand side of the road when he's evilly misleading motorists. Okay, so anyway, that's that. So the only thing I'm assuming that the right. So it's a bit of a puzzle that as to why there would be a lorry driving along a sheep track and then driving onto a main road anyway. I don't know what the purpose of that was, but there we are. Again, there's not really on this one though. There doesn't seem to be any sort of explanation as to why the lorry does that. There's no reports of an accident or anything like that. I mean, it's quite possible that a lorry drove down at one point, drove into a wall and crashed, but we don't know. So the thing is, I suppose, if being a phantom lorry driver, is that you don't have to pay road tax or MOT or motor insurance, and you can't get caught by the police. So there are advantages to this. So there we go. But that's the lorry side of things. Now the final section. So if you want to go ahead, CJ. So I know I'm aware of the time. We're getting towards 8 o'clock now, so should be
fine. Take however long you need.
Yeah, that's okay.
Sorry about that in text. That was me.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
It doesn't. Don't worry. It doesn't summon up anything. I hope not. Anyway. Okay. The final. Yeah. So I was going to explain before I go on to the final section of the lecture. The thing is, I knew I wasn't going to be able to fill 60 minutes with just the A38 one, so I added some extra material into it, but it seems to have exceeded my expectations. But anyway, here we go. So the final section is to do with this time slip on the Isle of Wight. This is a very strange case. It doesn't seem to be a replay of anything. The entities involved in it don't appear to be interactive or seem to be aware of what was going on, of the people who were experiencing it. So it's just a very strange case. Again, like all the other cases that I've mentioned, it's been one that's fascinated me for several years, decades. This one happened in 1969, January 1969. The the wife reported it to Sheila White. She reported it to Peter Underwood a few years later. I think it was Dr. White and his wife Sheila White. Dr. White, by 1973, I believe, had passed on, but his widow was able to relate the details to Peter Underwood. And from that, I mean, there's various different accounts of it. So I'm sticking with the Peter Underwood one because he got it firsthand from one of the witnesses. Other retellings of it are slightly different in the details they give. So I'm sticking with the Peter Underwood version. So in front of you, you've got a picture there. That is the Isle of Wight, or part of the Isle of Wight. This is the road going across. It's the Downland Road going across Ashy Down. Okay. So you can see it. You can see it there going into the distance. Next slide, please, CJ. I hope I've got this in the right order. I probably haven't. No, I haven't. No, I haven't got it in the right order. I was actually going. Oh, I know what I missed out. I was going to put a map of the Isle of Wight. It doesn't matter. But anyway, so that image you've just seen. So Dr. White and his wife Sheila White were driving across St. Helens, driving from St. Helens, which is just south of Ryde, to Knighton, which is on the southernmost tip of the Isle of Wight. It's a little way round from Ventnor. And they were going to drive through the middle of the Isle of Wight there's a crossroads just south of Newport, and then they were going to heading west, and then sort of roughly west across Ashy Down and sort of remote areas of the middle of the island, and then turning south down to Knighton, where they were going to spend an evening with friends. Now, this happened in January 1969. It may be in the 4th of January, just into the new year. Okay? There's full moon and little cloud. And Sheila White wrote to Peter Underwood in 1973 and published the account herself in the magazine Hampshire. So the image that they were expecting to see, although, okay, that was in daylight, that was something like they would have been expecting to see. But what they did see instead was, as they were driving along, Mrs. White, as they're going across Ashy Down, she saw some lights in the field to the right. There's quite a few twinkling lights. She mentioned it to Dr. White, and he said, well, it's probably farmers getting the sheep in, collecting sheep. But they thought it was strange because there were lots and lots of them, and there was quite a lot of them. So they said there were like hundreds of them. They thought that's strange. These burning torches, people walking around with flaming torches, hundreds of people. It's obviously not farmers bringing in sheep. It's just strange. So they drove along Ashy Down. And they thought maybe it was an agricultural show, but it was a cold night in January, so it just seems like a very odd time to be holding an agricultural show. So as they were driving along, they went further along. They came down the steep hill. There's another down a bit further. The road goes into a dip and then comes back up again, up to a place called Mersley Down. And as they were going down that, they could see that there was all these lights in the field to the right, which is to the north of them. And then they stopped and had a look, and there's all these lights going out. From a distance, and I've drawn this on here with my amazing artistic skills. I've included all the hundreds of torches. You can just make out on the horizon. They could see there's a lonely little lane that goes off to the right-hand side of the road. It goes to Haven Street, and it's like a little farm track. What they could see was, instead of being a farm track, is they could see a line of street lights, and then a lot of like urban buildings with lots of orange, red, and green and white lights. So it looked like a city landscape. This doesn't look like a rural landscape. And then you've got all these torches, people with torches as well, and all these flickering torches in the fields as well. Very, very, very strange. So they thought, well, yeah.
What's the date again?
The date, I think it may have been the 4th of January. If you're thinking the Isle of Wight Festival, no, that was later on in the year. I'm just thinking, I consider that.
Yeah, no, I was considering two things: the Isle of Wight Festival and fireflies or maybugs, but no. Not maybe fireflies, but neither of those. The
Isle of Wight Festival had to cross my mind, but that was much later in the year. So no, it was not Hendrix. He was not there. It was not him. He was not responsible.
Okay.
They drove down the hill anyway. So there's actually, I don't think I've got the map up, so don't worry about that one, unless we do encounter it. I forget what the order of the slides are, but anyway, they drove down the hill in the direction of where these lights were, and the line of street light. They drove down there. There's a turning to New Church on the left, and then they went down Mersley down, and then they came up the other side. So in the direction of the row of lights, where this old farm track was, which now seemed to have turned into a city street. When they reached the entrance to the lane, if you could go to the next slide, please, CJ. This is what they saw, approximately. Right, so it turned back into that again, right? So it's like, oh, where are all the lights? This is the road that had a little lane that had rows of street lights going down it, and what looked like an urban buildings, like a built-up area at the end of it. Nothing there. Nobody with torches anymore. They'd all disappeared. It's all gone. Thought, oh, well, this is strange. So everything had returned to normal. Stopped the car, looked around. Nothing there. No sign of anybody. No people with torches. No blazing torches. No city urbanization. Anything like that at all. So I thought, well, okay then. Well, let's just drive on. So I thought, this is strange. So they drove on towards the crossroads, which is just south of Newport, a couple of miles south of Newport. There is a pub there called the Hare and Hounds, which is a nice little thatched pub. If you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, please, CJ.
Oh, that's the same place in the daytime. Do you want me to keep going?
Yeah, oh yes, carry on going. Yeah, that's what it would look like in the daytime. Yeah, just keep on going. Yeah, there we go. So this is the Hare and Hounds. This is what it looks like in the daytime. This is now, as you can see, there's been extensions on there, which have probably been, some of which are probably date to after 1969. But anyway, this is the Hare and Hounds at the, and this is the direction they would have been approaching it from in 1969 as they came down towards it. So this is what they were expecting to see. So you've got a nice pub, and they were expecting to have a nice chat with the landlord, saying about what their weird experiences were, and oh, how odd this was. Do you know anything about it, etc., etc., etc. That's what they were expecting to see, or something like that. Only in, obviously at night. But what they actually saw was, please, next slide, please, CJ. This, or something like this. This is very odd. So what they found out instead was that the pub seemed to be bathed in a weird sort of light. Large numbers of people running back and forth across the road with torches, like scores of people running around with fiery torches all over the road, and sort of running backwards and forwards. There was like, ah. So the fields on the right were again filled with flickering lights, torches again. So Dr. White at this point was very thoroughly unnerved, both of them. Dr. White decided that it would stop and ask what was going on. So it's like, what is happening here? Just about when he was about to do this, just as he was about to stop and ask what was going on, an unusually tall man with a leather jerkin and a broad leather belt came towards them, apparently unaware of them. He came straight at them and walked straight through the front of the car, right straight through the bonnet. No impact. They stopped, and there was nobody there. There was nobody, didn't run anybody over. So they thought this is very, obviously very, very, very worried and disturbed by all this. They carried on driving slowly towards the Hare and Hounds. Okay, for all these people running around with torches and looking like that. So next slide, please, CJ. But 20 yards short from the before the pub, all the lights and people vanished as if someone was fixed off a switch. And there you go, that's what they saw. So all the people just suddenly vanished, and the pub went back to normal. Normal lights, no weird odd illuminations. It was just there were lights on. So they went inside the inn, everything was normal, atmosphere the same, nothing out in the ordinary. Perfectly normal pub, as it may be on a late evening in January. So they carried on to Knighton. So they got to the junction, turned left and went down to Knighton. Spent the evening with their friends down there. probably had a very interesting tale to tell them. That probably dominated the conversation for the entire evening. Probably bored their friends stiff while we're retelling it. And then in the early hours of the following morning, they decided to come back the same route. I don't know, is that the last slide, CJ, or is that one or more slides?
Let me just try. No, that's the last slide.
No, it's the last slide. Okay, that's fine. So anyway, they came back the same route in the early hours of the morning, and nothing further happened. That was that was it. Nothing else happened. So whatever it was, it had gone for when they made the return journey. Very strange, because they seem to be passing in and out of whatever it was. They passed in and out of it. They could see it from a distance. It appeared, disappeared, and then when it reappeared again, they're actually right in the middle of whatever it was, and then it completely disappeared again. There have been all sorts of explanations as to what it might be, and they don't. I mean, nobody's really come up with a sort of an answer that everyone agrees to, shall we say. It's just very odd. I mean, some people said that it might be some sort of mirage, and it was the lights of Portsmouth being reflected off the clouds or something. But to be honest, this was at night, on the late evening, on a cold January night. It was a clear sky, although I think there was a small degree of cloud cover, and it was just cold and at night, and it just utterly not the right conditions for a mirage anyway. And despite that, they actually came up with what the actual events were actually happening around them. So whatever it was too close. I mean, the fact that you had people running around the car and things like that would rule out a mirage, and the conditions would be, I mean, to get a mirage at that time in the winter, in the middle of the night or the late evening, would be just, there's too many different, it just rules it out pretty much, I would say, for practical reasons. Other things, they've suggested a time slip, though that's not really, I mean, that's the tricky one with that is in what direction are we talking about? Some said, well, it might be a Roman encampment, or maybe a Viking encampment. I mean, the description of a very tall man with a leather jerkin and a big belt sounds sort of like a Viking. But then, if it's a time slip, then why are we looking at what seems to be electric street lighting and urban buildings with lots of electric lights on them? That's not sort of Viking or Roman. So then the other suggestion was that it is a time slip, but it's not into the past, but into the future. So you've got that road has been turned into has been urbanized with street lighting. I don't think it's that far from Newport. So I don't know, maybe Newport expands southwards or something in the future, who knows? But then you've got the issue with people running around with flaming torches, and how does that fit into the future? So then there's this sort of the rather worrying thought that it might be some sort of post-apocalyptic nuclear future, and these people are just sort of reverted back to some sort of more primitive existence, but with electric lighting and buildings, and the whole thing is very complicated. But as I said, there's no satisfactory explanation, and apparently